Plus. Plus. All right. So the everyday phrase, at least 6 glasses. The explicit translation, the number of glasses is greater than or equal to 6. All right. So what would that be in inequality form? X is greater than or equal to 6. All right. Below 40 degrees, temperature is less than 40 degrees. So what would we write? X is less than 40. All right. You could vary your variable. You don't actually have to use X's every time. You could use T if you want, but for consistency, if you want to use X every time, that's fine too. Fewer than 20 calories. Number of calories is less than 20. What do we got? C is less than 20. X is less than 20. C is less than 20. Does not matter. At most 10 translates to less than or equal to 10. So we would say what? X is less than or equal to 10. And then between 35 and 120. All right, so that one's the weirdest one. 35 is less than the temperature, and the temperature is less than 120. So that you can write that a couple of ways. Off on the side here, I'll write it as 2 separate inequalities. All right, and so 35 is less than the temperature. Thanks, dude. All right, 35 is less than the temperature, so 35 is less than the temperature. I'll use T. And, right, so I'm going to use an and symbol. You don't actually have to use this. I'm just going to kind of expose you to the symbol because we're gonna streamline it in a second. But in the future, you'll be using this symbol. So, and is that symbol. So that means and. All right, so it's an upside down V. It's kind of almost an A. So that means and the temperature is less than 120. So T is less than 120. You could represent this as a compound inequality. All right, so you could merge it together and make it a single inequality where 35 is less than T, which in turn is less than 120. All right, so they mean the same thing, but obviously one's a little bit more concise than the other. All right, we'll be at a point later in the course, actually later in the unit, where we're going to be using that and symbol. So I figured I'd introduce it to you today so that at least I can say, remember that time we learned about that and symbol. Because we'll throw in the or symbol, which is actually a V shape. All right, so notation is something that, the sooner you become familiar with it, the easier it is to kind of work with it. It's just like learning a foreign language. Once you learn the letters and conjugating verbs and basic phrases, then it's easier to understand entire concepts. All right. So number one, I'm going to just do 2 examples with you today, and I'll set you loose. Solve each word problem algebraically. All right. That's going to be an important thing to keep in mind because once we kind of get a little bit of a head of steam with a lot of these concepts, I'll show you how to do a lot more things on the graphing calculator, in which case you'll have license to decide if it doesn't say algebraically which technique you want to use. Clearly give a let statement, an inequality, an algebraic solution, and circle your final answer. The one thing you don't need for the word problems would be the number line graph. All right, but one suggestion is if you have trouble visualizing your final answer, especially since in this case it's saying an inequality solution, or an inequality in your solution, it could easily say use interval notation in your final answer. Sometimes people find it easier to write their answer in interval notation if they create a number line. So it's not required for those kind of questions, but maybe you decide to do it on your own anyway. All right. So number one, we're looking at a sales representative given a choice between two paycheck plans. One choice includes a monthly base pay of $300 plus 10% commission on his sales. Second choice is a monthly salary of $1,200. For what amount of sales would the representative make more money with the first plan? So if you kind of compare this to what we did in the last unit, you're not noticing much of a difference except for the make more part. Because in the last unit, the question would be something like, for what amount of sales would the representative make the same amount of money? We'd use an equal sign. Here we're using an inequality. So very slight adjustment. So let X equal the number of sales. All right. So I'm going to just kind of keep things as organized as possible. I'll say option 1 and option 2. So option 1 is a base pay of $300. That's going to happen no matter what. And then 10% per, or based on the amount of sales, the number of sales. Oh, and actually, it wouldn't be number of sales. Sorry, that is a mistake. It's the total amount earned based on the sales. All right, so total sales in dollars. All right, because the units are important here. Because if we're talking about number of sales, like 10% off of like one sale would only give him 10 cents. That would be terrible. All right, but if he makes a sale that's $10,000, he's going to get 10% of that. Or she. Represent, yeah, it's left in general terms. Yeah, so it could go either way. All right, so 0.1 times X. And the other option is just flat out $1,200. Now, I don't know how many of you have jobs. Like, I don't want to say like real jobs versus non-real jobs, but basically a job where you get a check and you have to pay taxes and stuff like that. Not the babysitting and the walking dogs and picking up somebody's paper route or something like that. I don't even know if a paper route's still a thing, but things like that. Basically, a job where you have to you actually have to fill out forms and go through a hiring process, right? But in that case, if you're like in sales, most of the time there is some kind of commission associated with it. Like when you go into, I don't know how much experience you have with this, but if you go into like a furniture store, or if you go into, like with your parents to buy a car or something, and you'll see like people just kind of milling around on the floor, like especially in the furniture stores. You'll see sales representatives all over the place, and they're all like staring at you as you're walking around, hoping that you come into their zone. And when you do, they swarm you because they want you to buy from them. And then not only that, they want you to buy as much as they can possibly sell you because they're going to get commission off of your sales, as opposed to just getting a flat salary where they'd be like, all right, well, when you're ready to buy something, just find someone, they'll ring you up. All right. So the 300 plus 0.1x, that's the case of, like they're coming to you because they want you to buy from them, versus a person's like, the cash register's over there, So two very real life kind of situations. Now, 300 plus 0.1x, honestly, I think 10% in commission sounds like a lot, but you never know. For what amount of sales would the representative make more money with the first plan? So greater than symbol. All right. And so when you're reading these word problems, I do want you to consider the real life situation that's coming into play, because we're going to be doing projects, activities, and things like that. And in some of those cases, I'm going to ask you to research or collect data in the real world and try to make a determination based off of that information. So like one of the projects or activities, it's actually an activity, is going to be involving commission. So I'm going to ask you to research different jobs that involve getting commission, all right, and then make a presentation to the class, all right? So, you know, there is value in what I'm talking about here, or at least in terms of your grade, I guess, if nothing else. So minus 300. We're looking at 0.1x. I guess that's good enough. Is greater than 900. Now, I could divide both sides by 0.1, but I actually want to multiply both sides by something. What should that something be? 10. All right, and that's because 0.1 in fraction form is what? 1 over 10, right? So to get rid of that denominator of 10, we multiply it by 10. All right, that's a nice convenient way of doing it. It allows you to get through this entire problem without actually having to pick up a calculator, which is kind of nice. All right, so x has to be greater than 9,000. So this is $9,000 in sales. So $9,000 in sales. All right, so if I went with my original definition for that variable, that would have been awful. 9,000 sales in 1 month. Actually, is it a month? I don't know. Yeah, a month. Yeah, that'd be awful. Ooh, 30 sales every day. Working every day of the month, no weekends off. All right, but this is basically saying, sell a couple of refrigerators and you're good.
Wouldn't it be with the greater than sign be split because you're multiplying?
Now that's a good question. So the circumstances in which you flip a sign, an inequality sign, doesn't have to do with the fact that you're multiplying or dividing. It has to do with what you're multiplying or dividing. So what type of number causes you to flip the sign?
Negative.
A negative. So if you multiply or divide by a negative, it causes you to flip the sign. All right? Very important observation. All right? All right, so we want the blue ribbon prize. The average weight of John's 2 pumpkins must be greater than 819 pounds. One of his pumpkins weighs 887 pounds. What is the least number of pounds the second pumpkin could weigh in order for John to win the blue ribbon? All right? Word problem, we got to define our variables. So let x equal the weight of the second pumpkin. I have to buy a pumpkin today.
Oh, wait, please wait until Saturday and go to Muscoot Farm in Katona because I will be working there and I can give you a discount on pumpkins.
I might do that anyway, but I actually need it for tonight.
Okay, I got you.
We need that for Cub Scouts, but I also need one for like general decorations around the house.
General decorations
Yeah.
on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. We have a pumpkin.
We all go.
It's a valid point. Well, there is a question, a valid question for Jake. We want to know, is this discount option available to everyone, or is it just me?
Well, I mean, you can get a discount, but you know.
But you have to bring a coupon with you.
Gotta bring, a tip. Okay, tip.
Bring something for the tip jar. All right, let's see where this is going.
But for
For me, yeah, okay. I appreciate that. All right, so we have the first pumpkin is at 887 pounds, right? Wait, 887 pounds, geez. That's huge.
Wait, that is huge.
Plus the second pumpkin, which is the unknown one, right? But they have to average out to equal 819 pounds. How do I find the average between two numbers? Add and divide by 2. Now, it doesn't actually have to hit the mark of 819. It needs to be greater than. It needs to be more than that. All right? So now we have a proportion. So we think back. So we're going right back to the last unit. When you had a fraction equal to a fraction, maybe that 819 didn't look like a fraction to you, but now it does. We're going to cross multiply. But the thing is, it's kind of weird when it comes to inequalities. It's a question of like, well, where am I going to put the left side, the right side? Where am I going to put the inequality? When you cross multiply, you drag the bottom up to the top. So 1 multiplied by 887 plus x will be greater than 1638. 819 times 2 is 1638, right?
Yes.
Mental math sometimes. Sometimes it goes haywire, so. All right. So now I'm going to solve by subtracting the 887. $751. So x is greater than 751, but it's a word problem, so I want to represent my answer in words, yeah. So the second pumpkin has to be more than 751 pounds. Yeah, I could be lazy. I like the sound of that. Let's hop up to number 7. A couple pages down the line. One cell phone company offers a plan that costs $29.99 and includes unlimited text messaging. Another company offers a plan that costs $19.99 and charges 35 cents per text message. For what number of text messages does the second company's plan cost more than the first company's plan? All right, so this is kind of like an archaic type of question, although when I included it in the packet, it was years ago, but it was like cutting edge, because that's how cell phones worked at that point. Now it would be something more like your data plan costs this much, and if you go over your tiered plan, what would you pay per megabyte or something like that? All right, well, gigs now. But even that's kind of going away because most places, they kind of saw the light and they're like, yeah, let's just do the unlimited and charge you a fortune. All right, so let x equal the number of text messages Yeah, so imagine a world where you had to pay by the text message, like each individual one, right? The internet started off, you had to pay by each individual email. 10 cents per. So, pretty brutal. So, company 1. That's all right. Honestly, I think I'd rather pay for that than what you're going to have to deal with when you're adults, which is like the probably 50 or so streaming services you're going to have to pay for in order to watch all the things that you want to watch. It's like it used to all be on Netflix, but now it's like, no, you got to get Disney Plus, DC Universe, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, CBS All Access, Fox, I'm sure will have one if they don't already. CW, it'll be like, oh, cable TV, that sounds great. No, there's no cable TV. You got to pay for each one of them. And then I got DC Universe last year because I wanted to watch Titans. So I watched all of Titans in like a span of 2 weeks. Free trial ended after 1 week, so I paid for a month. And then I was like, okay, what else could I watch? Well, I could watch Batman from 1960s. Yeah. And that was about it. So, yeah, you're going to pay for that. That sucks. So, $29.99 plus unlimited text messages. Okay, so company one is good. Let me just actually replace that. $29.99. All right. And then, so that's all there is to company one. Company two is $19.99, which seems cheaper. And this is what people had to go through, because they had to decide, am I a texter or am I a talker on the phone? And then they realized, oh, I text more than I thought I did. And then before they knew it, they were paying $150 for their phone plan when they could have been paying $30 just to pay the $10 more. All right, for what number of text messages the second company costs more than the first company? All right, so we're looking at, if we do a quick subtraction, subtract the $19.99. Now that little strategy I used on the previous problem of just multiplying by 10, I mean, I could multiply by 100 and get rid of the decimal, but I don't think that's going to be the best way to go, because then I'll have to do another operation after that. So this seems like a calculator kind of situation. So let me get my calculator out. So 10 divided by 0.35. You're talking about 28.571-ish. All right, we'll talk about what that means in a second. 28.571, approximately. Use a little approximation symbol to show that it's not an exact value. All right, now I just want to think about what this means, because, I mean, I suppose there's a circumstance where you could send 28.571 text messages, but you really have to be creative to think about how that would work. Did it almost go through? Well, I don't think that would count, because if it almost went through, then the message failed. Did you send an incomplete message? Well, you sent a full message, it just wasn't a complete message on your end. All right, but you may look at it as like, well, I sent 57.1% of my intended message, but you're still going to pay for the whole message. All right, so in this context, we just have to think, all right, well, what's gonna end up putting us over the tipping point? All right, so if I do 28 messages, all right, this is saying that X has to be more than 28.574. 28 is not more than 28.574. So it'll be the 29th message that puts us over. So once we send the 29th message, that's when we'll be over the hump. All right. And you could test it out by plugging it into the equation of the inequality. If you plug in, and you can do this on your own, but if you plug in 28 for X here, you're going to get a number less than 29.99. If you plug in 29, you'll get a number more. If you plug in 28.571, you're going to hit it right on the spot. All right. So you could say anything more than 28.571, but it did say for what number of text messages. All right, so it is calling for an exact value, right? Even if it doesn't seem like that. All right, but there are some contextual situations where a decimal value would be okay. Like if I got a dollar amount, like that last question where we're talking about the dollar amount of sales. If I got $9,287.51. Well, a decimal makes sense there. All right, so I have to hit that mark or do better, right? But in this context, it doesn't seem to make sense. If I'm talking about population, it could go either way depending on what the population is related to. If it's people, probably looking at whole numbers, although there's exceptions to everything, all right? Yeah, so you just got to think about the context of the situation, right? That's going to be a big deal as we go forward.